Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. I'm MoneyMakescape, and this video is all about killing tormented demons. As my channel name suggests, we're going to be looking at how to make money from these guys, but we're also going to compare a high cost setup versus a budget setup and see what the difference really is. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's take a look at some requirements for this. First of all, you're going to need level 99 Slayer for access to the player-owned Slayer dungeon. This is great because it lets you capture one of them and place it in there, so you're not having to fight a group of them at a time. Then, you're going to want to make sure that you've got the Wild Gothic Sleeps quest completed. There is a long list of requirements. It is a bit annoying to get it all sorted, but without it, you simply can't kill these. Finally, the third and essential item that you need to grab is the Darklight Sword. Again, this has a long list of quest requirements, and I'm not going to go into it in this guide, but you need this sword to defeat the shield of the demon. Right, so let's take a look at what gears required for killing these monsters. So first up, we've got the budget-friendly setup. So this is really quite cheap, and I'm just going to run through the items and inventory now. So first of all, we've got the War Priest of Zamorak armor set. It's tier 75 and it's hybrid, which is perfect for TDs as they use all three combat styles. To grab this set, it's really easy. Go to God Wars Dungeon 1, either kill the main bosses or you can kill the minions to the relevant God Wars bosses there. It should only take you 2 or 3 hours to get a full set. There's 6 pieces in total, and I particularly like the Zamorak set because it has a special set bonus. So what that does really is give you 1% chance per piece to reduce incoming damage by 90%. So in other words, 7% of every hit you take can be reduced by 90% of the damage. Every time you're being hit by TD, so it's just a helpful way of kind of nullifying some of the damage they do. Next we have the Blood Amulet of Fury. This is actually a really decent amulet for just constantly healing you. I actually found during my testing that with this on, coupled with a protection prayer, protection from mage, that was enough to stop needing any food at all at this boss, even without bringing any overload, so thoroughly recommend that. Next, I've just chucked the Asylum Surgeon's ring on. If I'm honest, it doesn't matter too much which ring you use, just any kind of DPS ring is helpful. I chose this because it has no kind of cost per hour, it doesn't degrade, so just thought it's a really good budget-friendly item. Next, I've put the Turin Quiver in my slot. Now, you don't need this again, just because it has 4 prayer bonus, that was why I picked it. No degradation, etc. So it's helpful, but not necessary. We've got the Darklight, as I mentioned earlier. You need this, it's essential. And then in my other hand, you'll notice that I've got an offhand Shadow Glaive. So I've got a melee weapon and a ranged weapon. And this is particularly important because killing this monster requires us to be in legacy mode. And by using these 2 attacks, coupled with our familiar, which I'll talk about in a little bit, we actually help the demon to constantly change its protection prayers, and therefore allowing us to constantly damage it quickly. And the final item that I'm wearing, you'll see, is the Armadale's Book of Lore. Now, I think this costs something like 800k to make. It's quite a cheap item, but it's worth every penny in my opinion. And actually, what it does is when you activate it, it uses pages that do a special attack every so often, which heavily damages the tormented demon when you're fighting it. So it works out, I think it costs around 200k an hour to use, but honestly it speeds up your kills quite well, so yeah, recommend that. Okay, so going to the backpack now. A couple of things here. So overloads, self-explanatory, boosts your stats, help you kill it quicker. Then we've got a couple of prayer renewals. That is all you need. You don't need any penance aura on or vampirism or anything like that to kind of sustain your healing. As long as you're using those with just a protection prayer on, that's all the healing you'll need, coupled with the blood amulet. Then we've got some weapon poison plus, just helpful because the monsters are poisonable, so obviously kills it faster. Excalibur, the enhanced one, heals you. Again, it's there, you don't really need it, it's just good in an emergency if you need to heal. Same with the 2 rocktails I brought, not essential, but just handy to have. Spring cleaner, really useful item, breaks down all of your rune salvage drops that you're going to get here. If you haven't got that, why haven't you? Go and get it. But to be honest, if you want to use something else, you can use magic note paper and just note it all up, or bring high out runes with you and just out down the salvage. But it does help your overall profits to use something like the spring cleaner. I've got a couple of super restores, again, just if I need them. I don't find I've needed it in any of my testing, but if you do struggle with prayer, it doesn't hurt just to have a couple of those in an emergency. Perhaps you've AFK'd this monster too hard and you just weren't really thinking what you're doing. It's just good to have a couple on hand. Yeah, brought my magic paper, mainly because occasionally I've had some decent drops here that I've wanted to note, 2 or 3 of the rarer drops, which we'll talk about in a bit. But again, just nice to have there, really. Now, the Ice Nihil, this is quite expensive for what it is. I mean, it is a couple of 100k. You need to pop one of these actually every hour and a half, although I've budgeted it in for an hour's worth of use. But essentially, this is really key because it attacks fast and it attacks with mage. So that's the 3rd combat style being attacked with then. And as I've said, it's really important that you're using all 3 styles to constantly change the demon's protection prayers. And essentially this just means you can kill it really quickly and you can heal effectively too. And then finally, I've got an enhanced luck potion. The reason I brought this was to keep costs down on the build. You could bring a Look of the Dwarves instead of an Asylum Surgeon ring. They are really good and that will give you the same effect. But this potion currently costs 50k. I don't know, for me it's quality of life as well. It's how AFK it is. You know, what's the Look at the Dwarves now? I think it's like 70 odd million. This is literally 50k for an hour, so it's just simple and easy to do that, really. So that about wraps up our budget setup. Moving on then to the more expensive setup. So little disclaimer here, I'm not using the absolute best in slot items. I didn't bother buying Solek's offhand crossbow for this build, although I'm sure that would have increased the DPS a little bit, but I just couldn't be bothered, so that's why I've not done that. And also, you might be wondering how much these builds cost. I will be mentioning that a little bit later on in the video, so do stick around to find out the differences between the budget and the more expensive build. So, coming over to the equipment then, you'll see that I've got a full set of Anima Core of Sliske. Tier 80 hybrid armour, it has the same effect as the War Priest of Zamorak on it, and it also is augmentable, which that's probably the main benefit really, that it actually has things like Crackling 4, which does proc and helps DPS the TDs a little bit faster. Cinderbanes, they're quite self-explanatory, they increase poison damage, that's why I wear them. Hybrid gloves as well with a little bit of stat modifiers on there, so they do help with DPS a bit more in that sense. Silverhawks, they do have a little bit of DPS if you can count 0.6 as an increase, but really they're just because I like to train agility whilst they're here, and they are also hybrid boots, so really useful. Scripture of Wen, this is pretty similar to the Armadillo Godbook. It really isn't actually that much DPS increase, but they are helpful if you just want it to proc a few extra times, and sometimes those procs can heal you, particularly other monsters if you're using soul splitting things, although obviously we're not here. And then I think other than that, you'll see that I've got the Zuk cape on. That's purely because it's the best in slot DPS cape, so that's why I'm wearing that. And I think other than that, you'll see that I've got the Ring of Death, but that's just quality of life. That's more because sometimes I AFK a bit hard and I do sometimes die, so I stick that on just to reduce death costs. So moving on to the inventory, you'll see I've got Elder Overload salves. So they have a little bit of a stat increase over the other overloads, so that's why I used those. They do also have the super restoration potions in there as well for prayer, so it just keeps your prayer not draining quite as quickly. Then you'll see I've got the Ancient Elven Ritual Shard. It's just used in emergencies if I need some prayer. And I think that is it. So not drastically different, but you will see later that the prices are. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to get to the TDs, and I'm going to do this the normal way, which is teleporting to Menethos, because I haven't put 50 creatures that I've collected into my Player and Slayer dungeon to use the book teleport. So once in Menethos, I'm going to head over to the Shifting Tombs. I'm going to attempt to right click on the Shifting Tombs so I can manage it, and left click on Travel to Ports District. And from here you're going to run to the west towards the docks. And you might be wondering, why am I not surging? That's because I've put myself in legacy mode early. Because to fight these you do need legacy mode on to do this effectively. So down at the docks you can right click on Portmaster Cags and click travel to the sunken pyramid. And then from there right click on the door and hit enter dungeon. Now depending on where you have your creature, hopefully you've got it stored now. I've got mine over here, so I'm going to wander over here. And then to fight it, all we simply need to do is hit protect from Mage on, or in my case deflect magic, hit your overload, hit your super prayer renewal, hit your ice nihil on, and then click weapon poison and pass through the barrier. And that is it. It will literally just AFK now. You can click every 6 minutes if you like, or whatever. I don't know what the logout timer is these days, but all you literally need to do is just make sure that your prayer's not dropping too low. Typically what I do is, if I'm fighting these, when my overload runs out, I then click on one of the super prayer renewals as well, just to make sure that that's back up. If your poison goes down, it's not the end of the world. They're still pretty fast kills, whatever. And that's literally it. Now you might be wondering what sort of drops you can get here. Well, you can get the best drop, which is the dragon crossbow limbs, which they're used to make tier 90 ascension crossbows. So do really recommend those, you know, for the kind of drop that you're looking at for the most. That's why I actually brought the note paper. Occasionally I have got really lucky and had 2 or 3 of those in an hour, and they are just over 10 mil each, so they're kind of the main drop you're looking for. You can also get dragon claws drops. I think the pair of those goes for maybe 800k now. It's not terrible. Oh, in fact, no, not even that. No, probably 500k, but still, it's all extra money. And what's the other drop? The other drop is the dragon armor pieces that are quite unique. They're 100, 150k each. I think that they are actually worth putting together and building into dragon plate armor, because if you do that and add the dragon plate armor ornament kits and then disassemble them with invention, that actually allows you to get fortunate components. Whereas if you just disassembled the kits from treasure trails, you wouldn't actually get a fortunate component. So little tip there for you. But other than that, they're quite general drops. You will see that also kind of perks wise from archaeology, I have got the perk that automatically notes your ashes for you. That's purely because I like to keep track of how many I'm killing when I'm sat here AFKing these. I probably didn't show it on my other build actually, but normally I do bring a summoning renewal potion. A few extra things if I want to do this longer than an hour at a time, but it's really up to you. And then everything obviously just auto loots up like this. So, but as you can see, I don't need any other healing. The protection prayer coupled with an overload and the blood amulet is more than sufficient. If I did need to heal, I've got the enhanced Excalibur waiting there ready, but honestly, you know, I just don't feel you need it. So you might be wondering what the stats of these things are like in terms of how things are looking in terms of the cost of the build, and also how many kills do we get per hour. So let's take a look at that now. The budget setup cost a grand total of 31.6 million GP. That's for the offhand Shadowglaive and the blood amulet of fury. So it's only those 2 items, but as you can see, it's a really cheap build. And then finally, we can see that it cost 770k per hour to use, which isn't massive. It's more than I'd like it to be, and you could probably get that down by using a cheaper god book, such as the Zamorak one. I know that's still pretty good, but I just liked the way this setup works, and it didn't seem too unreasonable to me. The expensive setup came in at a total of 407 million GP, so quite a considerable difference. Obviously, there's a lot more items to buy in that. Mainly the War Priest of Zamorak and the other setup not costing anything is the difference you're seeing here. And then there's a total cost of 1.6 mil per hour to use this gear. So yeah, it's quite expensive really for something like this money making method. Let's compare the two methods then. So the budget setup versus the expensive setup. The budget setup came in managing around 120 kills per hour versus the expensive setup, which came in at 148 kills per hour. So not masses of difference there. And we can see that the budget setup netted us around 6.2 mil profit per hour, whereas this expensive setup only netted us 6.9 mil, which, if I'm honest, was really quite surprising. And really, when you look at the difference between the costs, 30 mil or so versus 400 mil, it's really a no-brainer as to which method is most cost effective. So I hope you've really enjoyed the video today. And this is my first ever YouTube video, so please do like and subscribe, and I hope to bring you more money making guides in the future. Thanks a lot. Bye.